Abiola Ojo-Osagie, the Managing Director for AfricInvest Nigeria, is my guest today. Hello, Abiola. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me today.
Thanks so much. We're going to get straight to it. Funding options, that's what you do.
Yes.
And you've done this for a while. What are the funding options out there for African businesses, new existing businesses, especially those ones that have a technology affiliation?
Funding options are quite a number.
Okay.
And I would start from, when you talk about new businesses, I wouldn't make a distinction at this point, but there is probably more options available to existing businesses than new businesses. But generally, I mean, if you're going to be starting off a new business, you could look at, very simply, family and friends and your own self-investment, because it shows commitment. Usually that's the starting point. You want to show something, you want to put in a little bit of commitment, and then you then begin to look out. So usually that's the starting point, and then you can then talk about looking at private angel investors is another important point. Right. These are really rich people that you have identified with, and they've known you and they trust you. Okay. They can also put money in a venture that you're looking to start with. Okay. And then you can grow that a bit more and look at private institutions. Okay, and when we talk about private institutions, we're looking at the likes of venture capitalists or private equity fund providers. Just a thin line. With the venture capitalists, they do more of startups. Private equity will do more of growth capital, depending on their mandate. Okay. So they're also available. And then you can look at debt financing options, and that we talk about. You could raise bonds, usually for existing businesses that have been able to demonstrate track record, or you could go to commercial banks. And obviously, you know what that means. You're talking collateral, and I can talk about some of the challenges and some of the hurdles you have to cross in each of these options. I mean, you could also look at issues. I mean, you could look at even equipment financing companies, because a business will require different things at different times. Whilst these ones would not give you money, they can fund part of the equipment that you require. And especially for technology businesses, that probably will be interesting, because they might need some of those equipment to be able to perform. You could also look at grants from government. Government of nations actually provide grants.
Do they in Nigeria? Do they in other African countries?
Interesting. In Nigeria in particular, I can narrow down to that. Right. Over the years, we've had intervention funds. I don't know if you've heard about intervention funds in Agric, intervention funds for SMEs, and they've actually been little competition to us, because when people hear about intervention funds from government, even though government tends at the payback, they see it as the national cake and they run after it. Free funds. Exactly. So they are available and people actually access them, although sometimes they're political, you know what I mean, but the people have accessed them in the past. You could also look at options relating to private placement. Okay. You know, private placement could be for new businesses, it could be for existing businesses. But the important thing about it is that it's really about talking to a few people that you trust to align with you. With public listing, I mean, it's for blue chips, companies that have been able to demonstrate track record over the years, and so they are able to go out there and get money from the public. Okay. You know,
so many options.
So many. And finally, I'd like to talk about one more: strategic partnerships. Right. That's also an option, because that gives you skill, that gives you capacity, and it's also an opportunity to get funding. Because strategic partners can come with skill, they can come with technical expertise, and come with funding as well.
So let's look at the typical SME, you know, techie or non-techie business. What are the typical challenges that they will face in accessing some of these funding options that you've outlined?
I mean, the very first few I mentioned, angel investor and family and friends, there's really nothing. I mean, the least hurdle you can get, just once they trust you, they give it to you. Okay. When we start talking about private institutions, then you have to get serious, because these people would ask you very difficult questions. You need to know your earnings, you need to know what you're talking about, you need to be able to put together what we call a bankable business plan, something that demonstrates that you understand what you want to do. Okay. Whether you're existing or whether you're growing, in terms of whether you're new or existing, you have to be able to put together your thoughts and be able to sell that idea. Yeah, this is very important. Okay. So what we've seen is that people are unable to do this. People are unable to actually document those ideas that they have.
Where can they get help from?
Oh, there are many. I mean, as you probably know, my background, I started with advisory, and the reason why I did advisory was to be able to understand some of these things and be able to put those things together. There are a few firms that can help, but one thing I want to say is that you cannot delegate it, because these ideas are in you. So you must work with them. What they can provide is a framework. You cannot outsource it. You can say to them, do me a business plan. They cannot. They can only put together, you know, what we call theory.
So you have to be involved. You have to guide them.
Start to finish. Other challenges that they would have, I mean, when you go to the bank, you have to give collateral, the interest rates are high, and all of that. If you go public listing, you are opening yourself up to the public. You can actually, the business can be hijacked from you if things go wrong. You know, but if you flip it over to private placement, it's usually not the case because you're still in control. Right. And then if you look at strategic partnerships, one of the issues is to be able to identify synergies, you know, because you don't want duplication, you want synergies, you want complementarity. You have to find a company that would complement what you're doing. So these are some of the challenges people face, but they're not insurmountable, I tell you. They're there, but they're hurdles that you just have to cross.
They can be crossed.
Oh, definitely, without a doubt.
So a new business, an existing business, 5, 10 years old, are there different approaches to accessing those funding options?
I think it is, I think that it's easier, like I said before, for the existing business to get money or to get funding. But it is not impossible for the new business also, or the new business entrepreneur to also access funding. What is important is the tenacity and the ability to stay focused. You will be challenged, you would have to go back and forth a few times, but I mean, I can tell you as an example, have funded new businesses in the past. We've had issues with some, but some have done really well. The problem with new businesses is that you don't expect external funding without putting in a bit of commitment. Right. You cannot grow in one day. You have to grow and scale. You have to grow gradually. You know, but what we find is that people want to start today and become a Dangote. It's not done. So it has to be a gradual process, and that gradual process would also mean putting in money in stages. Right. Money that you can afford. So this minute you start with your funds, family and friends, angel investors, you can go to the venture capitalists, because what I've described, it's not one or the other. It can be a combination. Okay? So it's not that when you go to the angel, you can't go to the venture capitalist. So
at different growth stages they apply.
And you would just combine everything. But the important thing is that you must start small and grow gradually. That way you're able to demonstrate. I think what's important is to be able to demonstrate track record of consistency, of being able to stay in power. Because in Africa, that staying power, we often miss it. People just want to do things. I don't know if it's because they feel that, you know, it's a mark of statement that I'm running a business, but it's not about starting. It's about finishing well and being able to build an institution that can outlive you. And for you to do that, you have to be gradual, you know, and if you're gradual, funding would also come in that way, and you can get even to the level of public listing. You know, you can get into the level of strategy. I think the juicy spot is to be able to get to a situation where you are comfortable enough to list your company. You know, and for you to do that, you must have the right structures in place. You must be very open and transparent. And typically, you must have gone through the other funding options before you get there. Because if you have a venture capitalist or a private equity fund in your company, they possibly would have taken you through that rigorous process. You know, such that listing would not be a problem. Because listing usually is usually the easy way out. In terms of, not easy way out when I say it's easier for you to get money from the public, especially if you're able to build up the company over time. Issuing bonds also is an option. Because what bonds, in layman terms, bonds is like an IOU. Okay, so you issue it. You are the one that is issuing, and people they're taking up those bonds with a promise that you're going to pay back in the future. You know, so those are options, but it's not something that happens in one day.
Are there any peculiarities at all in getting funding for a technology business vis-a-vis getting funding for other types of businesses, whether it's new or whether it's existing?
Okay, I think that generally speaking, technology, we're fine because we're a generalist fund, and typically we would look for this type of sponsors and support them. So, but what we have found with, specifically to answer your question, is that with technology businesses, they're always too early. You know, they do not, sometimes the businesses are not even well incubated, apart from what I said earlier about being able to actually document, you know, articulate the business idea. They are unable to do that. I'm sorry, they can't. But you know, what you need is to be able to sit with somebody who can do it and pour your heart out. But they're unable to even, they don't have the patience to do that. And then sometimes the businesses have not been properly incubated. There are fundamental things that investors would look out for, and technology businesses are not different. What do we look out for? We look out for, I mean, taking for granted that the sector is interesting. I take, for example, maybe the issue of mobile money, just as an example.
That's an excellent example.
You know, so if mobile money is interesting to me as an investor, I'm going to look out for the best sponsor I can work with.
Right.
Which I did, you know. So we looked out for a few, and they were just not ready. So we would look out for things like, given that the sector is interesting, we would look out for the sponsor. And when I talk about sponsor, this is very important. Then the next question is, do you have a team?
Right.
Most times they don't. Then also you then talk about, you look at the business model, and then you look at it in terms of scalability, adaptability, because obviously you want to make money. Depending on the type of investor, we would also look at exit options, you know, because it's not in all cases that an investor will stay forever. You know, they probably want to stay for a period of time to build an institution and then be able to say that, look, from this point we think that you are able to stand. So that exit must be there. We must be able to discuss it and be able to identify it even from the beginning. So these are the things we look at.
Some of the things, because it would seem that you consider technology businesses to be slightly higher risk, perhaps, than other businesses. Yes. Okay, so we've got those techpreneurs out there, you know, the ones who are hoping to build these big businesses that span across Africa. A few practical tips for them. Three things they can do differently today to change their business.
Well, I think the first thing I'll just say to them is, don't give up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep at it.
Don't give up. Don't think that there are no funding options available there for you, or because you have faced one obstacle or the other, you know, you then say that your idea is not sustainable or it cannot be implemented. It's not always the case. You have an entrepreneur. One of the qualities of an entrepreneur is to be able to stand and to be able to face challenges and surmount them. So you must be able to go back and redefine your ideas, you know, and make sure that you can sell the ideas. So don't give up. All of the funding options I've spoken about, they're available also for the techpreneurs. So that's one, don't give up. The second thing I'd like to talk about is the fact that you cannot do it alone. Please know that you need to find a good team to work with, and also know when to stop. Know that at the point when you need to bring in skills that will complement or supplement yours. Okay. You know, you need to know, because that way you can bring sustainability into the business, which is important. The third thing is that I've heard, I haven't experienced it, that there are some crowdfunding platforms. You can engage web, you can engage technology on the internet, you can be able to get some crowdfunding platforms that can support you if you're able to. They also have their rules that you have to adhere to, but there are some platforms there also that you can engage with, and they can actually challenge you more before you actually physically bring your proposals to the likes of you know, my company or other fund providers. Engage with them. I think I heard one, I haven't experienced it, but I think Kickstarter or something, you can go on the web and find out, and they can actually also groom you so that you can know what to expect when you meet with fund providers.
Excellent, excellent. So be dogged, keep at it, don't be discouraged, explore all the options. It is possible. That's Abiola Ojo-Osagie's message to us today. Thanks for listening. Abiola, thanks so much for spending time with us. I think it's been very interesting.